Let's talk about that now and show you why that area of low pressure moving up the coast as we head through tomorrow afternoon and evening will pull just above the ground air temperatures above 32 degrees. So that warmer layer of air will melt any snow falling into it. And then the question becomes, how deep is the cold layer near the surface to see if it refreezes into sleet or actually freezes on contact on the ground. So we're going to discuss all that. Here are the various types of precipitation you get. We know a warm layer is coming in for sure, and if the warm layer extends from way up high in the atmosphere all the way to the ground, we get basically rain. Our predominant precipitation type will be freezing rain or perhaps a little bit of sleet. We've got a pretty thick warm layer of air here, so the snow falls into that and melts. And then the layer of cold air that's below 32 is barely very thick at all. It's not very thick is a good way to put it, and for that reason water does not have time to refreeze until it actually makes contact with the ground. And that's the worst kind of winter precipitation because it's very hard to see and it creates quite a glaze as well. Now sleet, the cold layer is a little bit deeper, so the rain falls into that and actually refreezes into small ice balls known as ice pellets, and this is what you need if you want to see all snow. Basically, the entire column of air is below freezing from the clouds all the way to the ground. So let's dive into what we're expecting around here, and we'll start with Friday morning at 8 o'clock. There will be clouds around, but there's not going to be any precipitation at all. Even by lunchtime, it still looks nice and dry out there. Now, as we head deeper into the afternoon towards 3 and 4 o'clock, some moisture begins to roll into the area. Initially, the air is so dry that anything falling from the cloud is going to evaporate, but that evaporation, rain, some sleet, and even a few flurries that break out, especially across the PD and on the border belt during the middle and latter part of the afternoon. For those of you in Horry and Georgetown counties, more than likely we could see a few sleet pellets mixed in with what will likely be just rain. Now, as we head towards 6 o'clock, could be some snow flurries up on the border belt mixed with some sleet. For the rest of us across the PD, even toward the Grand Strand, wouldn't surprise me to see some sleet mixing in with the rain from time to time, but eventually that warmer layer will become better established, and anything over the eastern parts of Horry and Georgetown counties up and down the Grand Strand will be basically rain. As you go from Loris back over toward Johnsonville and points north and west of there, any sleet out there is transitioning into freezing rain across the PD and, of course, on the border belt as well. Now, as we head deeper into the evening toward midnight, the best chance of any accumulating ice will generally be in this pink area from Lumberton to Dillon, near Marion, over toward Florence, down toward Lake City and points north and west of there, including Hartsville, Darlington, Bennettsville, and Laurinburg. As we head toward 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, a lot of the precipitation is winding up and heading on down out to sea, and with that, cloud cover will be around as we head through Saturday morning. We're not expecting much in the way of precipitation at daybreak on Saturday. So this is a Friday afternoon and Friday night event for our area. Let's take a look at exactly what we're expecting here, and what you see in this color here from Laurinburg to Lumberton, Dillon to Florence, Darlington and Hartsville. Spotty flurries and sleet to start, then mainly freezing rain with some rain mixing in. We could have ice accumulations between 0.05 of an inch and 0.15 of an inch of rain, ice that is. That's not an extremely high amount of ice. It's not going to bring down trees and power lines, but it may cause a bit of a glaze on some of the cold roadways and some of the bridges and overpasses as well. South and east of there from Marion, Johnsonville, Loris, perhaps toward Conway, up toward Green Sea. You may see some flurries and some sleet tomorrow afternoon, then some freezing rain, but that should all change over to mainly just rain. So ice totals less than 1/10 of an inch in those areas. And along the Grand Strand, again, maybe a few sleet pellets, but temperatures will warm above freezing, and it's just plain rain up and down the Grand Strand through Carolina Forest and back toward Forest Brook as well. So where are we talking about travel trouble spots? Not so much in Horry, Georgetown, and Williamsburg counties, but there will be some minor travel impacts across parts of the PD and on the border belt. Again, some patchy ice is not out of the question, especially on some of the bridges and overpasses. It gets a lot worse when you get out of our viewing area up towards Charlotte. Ice on many of the roads and the bridges and overpasses. A good idea not to be traveling towards Charlotte tomorrow afternoon or tomorrow night into very early on Saturday morning. Things will improve pretty quickly during the day on Saturday as the sunshine does return across the area. So I wanted to give you an idea of what it means when you get certain amounts of ice. As I mentioned, we're expecting roughly around 1/10 of an inch of ice. So on the low end of the minor impact scale here, you'll get a glaze in some of the cars, ice in the trees, bridges and overpasses could become icy, but only isolated power outages. Most of you are not going to lose power. Obviously, as you go up in the scale, things get worse. We don't anticipate this happening now. This system is a pretty fast-moving system with limited moisture, so we're not looking at a moderate or severe ice storm in our area at all. So a lot of people want to know about the snow. I wish it would snow. I'm a huge snow fan, but unfortunately, outside of some flakes at the very beginning, this is not going to be a snow event for us. In fact, for most of the Carolinas, it's not going to be. Until you get to Charlotte, up toward Greensboro and points north and west of there, that's when you could see more than an inch of snow. That's not going to happen in our area. Those chances are basically near zero now. So we concentrate on how much ice, and when you look at all the forecast models, a very thin layer of glazed ice, very likely west of Interstate 95, perhaps a little bit south and east of there as well. Getting 1/10 of an inch of ice, well, that's a 50 to 60% chance of that. Once again, from Florence to Lumberton, points west of there. But the good news is 1/4 of an inch of ice where it really starts to get pretty treacherous. The chances of that happening in our area, less than 10%. So that's certainly some good news. Still, you'll need to exercise caution if you're going to be traveling tomorrow evening and tomorrow night, and then very early again on Saturday morning. All right, so let's recap it for you. Friday afternoon, 12 p.m. to 6 p.m., spotty snow, sleet, and rain, primarily inland, mid to late afternoon. Very little to no accumulation of any of that frozen precipitation. There could be some sleet, but mainly rain right along the immediate coast during the afternoon hours. Then as we head toward Friday evening, sleet, freezing rain, and rain, especially across the PD and on the border belt. That's where we have our best chance of getting a light glaze of ice during the evening hours. There could be some slick spots, especially as we head through the latter part of the evening, but I'm not anticipating any power issues. And again, right along the coast, it's basically all rain at this point in time. That will be the case overnight as well. Freezing rain will begin changing to rain for many areas, but on that border belt for Robeson, Dillon, Marlborough and Scotland counties, perhaps into Darlington and northern Florence counties as well. The freezing rain may hang on a little bit longer, allowing accumulations to get up to 1/1500ths of an inch. Again, that will produce some slick spots, especially on some of the bridges and overpasses. And I don't think anything worse than isolated power outages. And once again, it's basically just rain along the Grand Strand. Around or shortly before daybreak on Saturday, any lingering precipitation will be heading on out to sea, and the sun's going to return. So if you have any ice early on Saturday morning, it's not going to last very long because we will easily climb into the 40s as we head through the morning and into the afternoon. So again, to recap, worst of the weather is likely Friday evening through Friday night. The further north and west you go, the more likely it is that you'll have to deal with some frozen precipitation, mainly in the form of freezing rain or even a little bit of sleet. Can't rule out some flurries, but for the most part, many of us are not going to see a single flake of snow as we head through the next 36 to 48 hours. So hopefully you got all that, but as usual, we have another meteorologist in the office here today. Alex Cordero is with us, and he's been monitoring the feed on Facebook to see if you guys have any questions. So Alex, any questions that some of the folks have asked?
One of the questions is, and I know you kind of mentioned this, but just to revisit, power outage potential. Is this something we should worry about with any sort of icing?
I think the icing is going to be pretty limited. I don't see it getting to the point where it's really weighing down and bringing down power lines and tree limbs. So I don't think power outages are going to be a big deal. More than anything else, you just got those slick spots on the roads, bridges, and overpasses because this has been a very cold week. So the ground is cold. It won't take a whole lot of frozen precipitation to accumulate on the ground to cause some issues pretty quickly.
For those who maybe, this is, I guess, a side of both sides here. For those who like snow and for those who hate snow, is there any potential storm down the line that might kind of exhibit any chance of this?
Well, we've been talking about this potential for about a week now. Anything beyond a week gets to be very sketchy when it comes to the models, and right now there are no indications over the next 5 to 7 days of any additional storm systems coming our way. There are some long-range forecasts that would suggest that several more rounds of cold air may come our way, and we can kind of see that pattern happening, but there's no way to know if any specific storms will form and, in a sense, meet up with the cold air to produce any frozen precipitation.
Should we worry about any refreeze of rain that might linger Saturday night after the rain that moves in Friday night into Saturday morning?
So I think because the precipitation is gone around daybreak on Saturday, we'll have all day long with temperatures getting into the 40s for not only anything to melt, but it'll also evaporate. So there will be no issues in our area with any kind of black ice on Saturday night.
That's about it here. Okay. Everyone else just hoping for snow or hoping for spring sooner rather than later?
Yeah, I think a lot of folks that like snow would much rather have that than ice. If you ask me, it's just a waste of cold air unless it does snow, but that's just not going to happen this go around. Alex, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you too for joining us. Don't forget, our first newscast is at 5 o'clock tonight. We'll have some new information to pass along. And of course, we'll talk about the impacts to our community as well, whether or not schools are closed, etc. Right now, I don't think any of them are, but I'm just a weather guy. I'm not in the news department, so they'll let you know that coming up tonight at 5 o'clock on ABC 15. Have a good afternoon, everyone.